Hi, everybody, and welcome back. We're going to talk a little bit here about consistency. So, as you can see, I'm looking at one of these scouting reports that have come up. This player is with Beijing Baxi. This is Zhang Ge. And we have a lot of things that are wrong with this player. But one of the things that I notice here that has come up is this should be looking to add a greater consistency to his game. So I've said before, there are three things that I really care about when I'm scouting players. It is consistency, injury proneness, and whether they like big matches or not. I actually care about that more than I care necessarily about this letter grade. I've hired players who happen to have that sort of, who have a poor letter grade, but who at least have a little bit of consistency and who are not injury prone, just to give them a chance. But in this case, there's no way that I'm going to touch them. Now, if you want to understand how consistency works, the best way, I think, to show this is to show you a player who is not fully consistent. And we happen to have one on this squad, and in fact, he's one of our more recognizable stars. If you've been watching this, that would be Kwon Hyo-kyu. So when we take a look over here at Kwon Hyo-kyu, who's playing at a level that is far beyond what he should be playing at, Mr. Kwon needs to do work on being more consistent if he is to develop further. Now, there are a lot of theories out there on the forums, on the message boards, on Reddit, on other YouTube channels, everywhere. I've seen them all about what you can do with players who are inconsistent. And it's stuff like, oh, well, if he has a bad match, you need to go scold him for it. And if he does well, you need to praise him for it and all this stuff. You can do that, and you will see the consistency hidden attribute move like inch by inch by inch. To get Mr. Kwon away from being inconsistent and make him consistent might take you 10 years. I mean, do you really want to keep playing with a player who's not playing consistently for that long? I'm going to tell you that I don't. I really don't. If I had known that Mr. Kwon were this inconsistent, I never would have signed him, and he wouldn't be an important player for us, and you wouldn't even hear me talk about Kwon Hyo-kyu, and then I wouldn't get all these comments about how good it is that I can say the names right. But anyway, that's beside the point. We'll take a look here and see what consistency really does, right? So we're going to look at his form, and you can see the inconsistency in his form even after this short amount of time. You can see it when you pay attention to these ratings, right? We see excellent, excellent, and then, what was this? This wasn't so good. And then excellent, excellent, and then, well, I don't know about that one. That one also wasn't exactly that good. If we could look back further than this, and I don't think that it will let me, but if we could go back to earlier matches, you would see that there are actually earlier matches we had lower ratings, including a 6.1 or 6.2, something like that, in one of the early friendlies we had right after he was signed. That's what inconsistency does to you. So there's no way to tell when it's going to happen. What happens, the way the Football Manager works, the way that it generates results, is you have all sorts of attributes for players. This is the stuff that you know what it is. Like you see it on Reddit all the time. People are like, rate my left back, sort of like, I don't know, the Tinder of Football Manager, right? And you swipe left, swipe right. And, they'll talk about, oh, there's all these different attributes that come out. The way the game works is it will take a combination of your team's attributes, the other team's attributes, factors like weather and stuff like that, and then put in some randomness and comes up with a result. We know that there's randomness involved because if you play the same match over and over again, you'll get a whole bunch of different results, including some that you might think don't make that much sense. That's kind of just the way that it is. It's the way that it works. The problem with consistency is that if you are inconsistent, it means that there is less a chance of you in any given match of playing up to your potential. If you are highly consistent, it means that chances are match in and match out, you're going to be hitting that high potential. And that's the problem. There's no way to predict when it's going to be on or off. So the problem I have with Mr. Kwon is I don't know which Kwon Hyo-kyu I get when he goes out. I might get the Kwon Hyo-kyu who has the 8.5 rating or whatever. I might get the guy who had a 6.7 rating at this level. Now, the truth is, you can see this even in hardcore mode here. The truth is that this guy is way too good for this team. He's way too good for this level. He's a good player for most Super League sides. He's close to his full potential, which I have a hard time believing since he's, 21. He's got to have more potential and the ability to improve a little bit more. But the problem that we have is that he is not fully consistent. That means that he won't always play at that level. You will see players who are not fully consistent who will have excellent matches. You might remember when Yusuf Moukoko, that his first name? Whatever. But Moukoko came out back in FM101. That was after the winter update, and it was this huge thing, and everybody was doing videos about him and how great this guy is and on and on. The problem with Moukoko, of course, is that he has that inconsistency. Now, when you're playing for the Dortmund under 18 squad or whatever it is, of course he's going to be a superstar because he's playing against players who are far below his level. if you train him up well enough, a player like Mokoko, even at the highest level, can overcome that inconsistency by just having such a good amount of general skill that it doesn't really matter. Yeah, he doesn't always play at like the top of his level, but like, I don't know, a third or even half of his talent is still better than everybody else on the pitch, right? That does happen. But do you really want to take that risk? That's the question you have to ask yourself. And that is why you see for players like Mr. Kwon, when I go into my notes, I have created a note that says inconsistent. The reason why is because then when I look at my squad and I'm like, oh, who am I going to start today? Oh, I think I'm going to start Mr. Kwon. I don't have to click in and be like, wait, is he the one who's inconsistent or is he not? Now, there are a couple of things we need to talk about because there's a lot of bad advice out there. Number one is that it is not true that young players are just inconsistent by design. That's not true at all. I've heard that a lot. I know that there are certain YouTubers who I follow really closely who will say that it's not true. You can find young players everywhere in the world, including in China, on these teams that are like nothing, that are consistent. Let's see if I can find one on our team. Yes, here you go. Clicked into the first one I found. This is Zhang Chuang. This is a new gen. He's 16 years old. He comes from Hailar. I'm not sure where that's supposed to be. That's odd. Anyway, he's a Chinese player. How did we get this guy? Oh, we bought him from Heilongjiang Ice City, which is a great team name, by the way. Yeah, we got him from Heilongjiang Ice City for 1.4 million renminbi. They've never played him. He's just a young player. And when we look at his coach report, we'll see that he is a fairly consistent performer, and he's got good, determined personality. Not the best personality. I'll talk about that in a different video, though. And he's made a lot of improvements, and he has the ability to go past his man. And we still think maybe he doesn't have the required ability or potential, whatever. What I care about this guy is that he's consistent. So I know every single time he goes out, whether he's going to be able to perform at level or not. There are young players who are consistent. Not all of them have the inconsistency problem. You do run into the other guys like this. Here's Lu Li, who I think we actually bought him from Beijing Bashi. That was a great transfer for me, let me tell you. This is one of these where I was happy to see that the scouts were giving him like an A or an A+ or whatever, and I was like, I'll sign him without knowing everything about him. And then it turns out that, yeah, he has one of those red kind of deep inconsistent ratings. Got a great personality. He's professional. I love guys who are professional, but the chances of Lu Li ever being able to play at this level is very close to zero because of the consistency problem. The consistency problem is not that he's not going to be able to train well. No, the problem is that when I give him first team game time, sometimes I'll get a great game out of him and sometimes I won't. And I'm never going to be able to know, like, okay, so which Lu Li am I getting? Am I getting the one who's going to give me like this 10 rating like he had in this game? Or am I going to get one who's going to do basically nothing, right? And this is the problem with every single player you run into that's inconsistent. You just don't know, is this guy really going to be good enough or is this guy not quite as good as we thought? And what exactly is it that we're going to do with him? So that basically is the story about consistency and inconsistency. You'll get some players who just are not quite at the level, who are consistent, who have other problems. You remember Wu Ping. Wu Ping has that lack of self-confidence. He probably has even more of it now that I've kept him in the under-19s. When you look at his form, well, it's not going to show us far back enough, I suppose, for his form because he's played first-team games. Oh, here we go. We'll see for what his form has been like for us. You can see that his form has been, it looks a little inconsistent, right? Some good games, some not so good games. But the truth about this is that this has nothing to do with his consistency. This has everything to do with his actual ability, right? The truth is that he is not a good enough player for our first team. And it will tell you that, okay, well, maybe he is a standard player for our team at this level, but he needs to do a lot more training and he needs to improve a lot in the future. We'll talk, like I said, again about those personalities and what low confidence really means and why low self-belief is an awful personality. But just know for now that when it comes to consistency, you want to see a lot of green. You don't want to see orange or red. My advice for you is if you have a player, even if his attributes look great or his star ratings are off the charts, if you have a player on your club who has a consistency problem, sell him. You'll get a better player who doesn't have that problem. And if you're looking for a player and he's got everything good except he's inconsistent, don't buy him. Go buy a guy who's younger, who's consistent, and who you can mold into the player you want him to be. Anyway, those are my thoughts on consistency. I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.